call to order the Westlake City Schools Board of Education work session for Monday, February the 7th, 2022. Roll call.
Lizinski.
Here.
Kraft.
Here.
Fanukin.
Here.
Piernot.
Here.
Stoll.
Here. Everyone would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call.
Lizinski.
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Fanukin.
Yes.
Kraft.
Yes.
Piernot.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So now have the superintendent's presentation.
Great, thank you. Share my screen. Slideshow going. Did that go? Good. All right, thank you, Mr. Kraft. Presenting a follow-up to last board meeting's presentation. Going through what we typically go through is, as we came into the school year, we set two primary goals: to provide a safe environment that would limit the spread of COVID-19 and to keep students in person 5 days per week. Some of the threats that we had to those goals were transmission in school, which could lead to isolations, as well as exclusions, which is the school's version of a quarantine, and also quarantines by the Board of Health. The other issue that schools are not alone with dealing with was staffing. In our district, and obviously in all schools, you have employees at every level of what you do, whether it's your bus drivers getting your students to school and home from school, kitchen workers, aides, secretaries, teachers, etc. We hit that time in, I would say, December, January, that it was very difficult to keep those things going. As we started our year, we followed a flow chart similar to this. I shared this last time as well, where a goal was back to that quarantine and exclusion was to keep students in school. And at the time of the start of the year, the quarantine protocols were that a student to stay in school, there were two criteria, whether the student was wearing a mask and distanced 3 feet or more. That did help us a ton in keeping students in school. I mentioned last time there were school districts that had over 1,000 students quarantined by quarter. We had a fraction of that. The other, and I'm trying to present the same information that I presented last time, but just with the new numbers. And what we reviewed last time is on the left are the cases that we experienced directly within the school district, and on the right are the cases that we experienced as a county. It doesn't look exactly the same, and I'll point out again that it looks a little, I mean, you can see the trend, it looks very similar, but a big difference is the graph on the right is Cuyahoga County, and they chart by the day. So they'll record their cases every day. We chart by the week. Our highest point, we were looking at 66 in this area, and then we dropped to 33. And that's where we sat in our last board meeting and looking at, we wanted to see that trend of cases, which path they were going, and it did continue to drop and put us in a pretty good situation here. When you look at Cuyahoga County, this was about 3,000 cases per day at the time, and it dropped to the 100, 200s. So you see a mirror in the drops, which isn't surprising because our school is in Cuyahoga County. We're typically a reflection of our community. And so to see that those trends were aligned is not surprising. But I think, we've heard before, well, why were there spikes in the school during this time? It's because there were spikes in the community at the time. Another data point that we talk a lot about is the percent positivity. And you could see a similar trend as you look around the first of the year and the holiday season, where you did see that spike that many of associated with Omicron happening in around the holiday season there as well, but then the drop off afterwards. That slide bar on the top, I could have gone all the way back, but I just thought looking at from Thanksgiving on was a good way to look at it. Otherwise, it becomes a really larger thing, and this is the area that we're focused on anyway. So we said we're going to look at 2 weeks, and I can read that to you. Maybe if I put my glasses on, a little bit easier to read, but to look at it, we had our board meeting on January 24th, which was a Monday. We do record our cases from Friday to Thursday. That helps us get that posted prior to the weekend, as opposed to getting the cases gathered up by the end of the day Friday and trying to post it. So that, if you can't read that, it says week ending January 27th. When you look at the cases, even across the district, we were looking at a total of 9 cases, and that's including all 4 of our buildings. Going into the next week, and you saw that on that trend. So when you saw that line chart that I showed, it went up and then it dropped down. Small increase going from 1 week to the other. I think you're going to see that general fluctuation where you're going to have, 9 or 10 and then 12, and you're going to be bouncing forth in there. But even so, we saw a decrease at the high school, and pretty much it looks like a leveling of the cases that we're experiencing. This is what I'm going to go through. This was also from the previous one, talking about the quarantine and exclusion. In the school setting is when you would talk about an exclusion, and then outside of school, like carpool, your home, whatever happens outside of our district, that is governed by the Cuyahoga Board of Health, and that's considered a quarantine. So we work with exclusions inside the school, which would be classrooms, lunchrooms, bus, any extracurricular activity, anything that we are in charge of, that's what it is. And the steps remain the same regardless of vaccination status, and that's the mask to stay, which I'll talk about in a moment. So looking at the mask to stay, we did put together a phase-in plan previously, and that's the 3rd bullet where actually the 2nd and 3rd bullet, where we initiated it on December 1st with the plan to go January 5th at the Dover campus, and then Westlake Elementary School on January 24th. It's currently in place here at the Hilliard building and our transportation building, the 2 buildings that do not have students in them. This was initiated at the high school on December 1st, but then paused on December 17th as we were hitting that spike that I showed you a moment ago. And this is the verbiage from the Ohio Department of Health talking about what mask to stay and test to play is. Now, since I talked about this a little bit in the last meeting, but we had no idea what was coming, when it was coming, and what it was going to look like. But we've been hearing rumblings that there were going to be some changes to contact tracing. And this came out from the Ohio Department of Health on January 26th. And what it indicates here is that schools may discontinue universal contact tracing, but are expected to assist LHD as local health departments with contact tracing, case investigation, exposure notification related to outbreaks or clusters in schools as determined by the local health department. K-12 schools should continue to follow ODH's protocol of mask to stay, test to play, and allow asymptomatic students to attend school while wearing a mask if they have been exposed to someone with COVID. The best place for kids is in the school, in person, full time. So that's an adjustment, and that's a big one. And so I'm gonna break down the difference between what we were supposed to be doing and what the new guidance is saying. And I want to show you the difference in being able to manage that. And if you watched last week's presentation, this may make a little bit more sense. So this is a traditional classroom. For those of you who did not watch last week's presentation, I will point out, this is not a Westlake classroom. I Googled classroom, high school classroom, and this is what came up. and I took a screenshot of it so I could do a demonstration. So if there happens to be a class that has an Effie, a Donald, a Gil, and a Mary in it, it's completely by chance. Yeah, there's no, so if Effie's mom is like, this is her class, it is not Effie's class. This is off the internet. So when we look at that, what I said about the universal, and let me see if this is letting me, if I draw on this, you're going to see it. Okay, you're not seeing it. So
Just share your screen differently.
yeah, I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to stop my screen sharing really quick, and I want to share my entire screen with you. Well, if I do that, or you're going to see my little Zoom thing too, aren't you?
Yes, temporarily.
All right, so let me do this. I'll just switch over to this really quick. So here's an example of when we were looking at, we'll call it the universal contact tracing, but it really is contact tracing down to the individual. And when you think about it for a second, it is contact tracing down to the individual, which really can be pretty daunting. And I'll show you what that meant for our secondary classrooms. This person right here, let's say this is Mary. She's the one, because she's nice and centered, that helps with this demonstration. When we were required to do universal contact tracing, which leads to what we do with Mask to Stay, is if Mary tests positive, then what happens is all students within 6 feet are considered close contacts. So those students would go into the Mask to Stay. So that would be 8 students just within that class that would be expected to Mask to Stay. Now, when you have those 8 students, and Mary in our high school setting has at least 7 classes. So then that would be multiplied by 7, which is now that's 56 students that we need to contact. We need to monitor and go through everything in regard to making sure that they're masking to stay. When you think about it, at a time when there were 33 cases at the high school, now granted, it's up to 56 because, some kids are going to choose to wear masks. Some kids may be duplicates. Mary may sit next to the same person 3 times. But the point is, there's a lot of students that with the way that the contact tracing was established before, that we had to trace and monitor. So this particular change in protocol is a big deal for us, and I'll show you in a moment what that means. But let me X out of this really quick so I can. Okay. Oh, now it goes back to that. Let me go back and reshare my screen and get to this. So that's what we have here. Now, when it says, okay. So now this is the change that came out on, what was that, the 26th or 27th, is it changes the contact tracing from universal to cluster tracing. Here's what this means. It stays the same. There are 2 primary factors when it comes to contact tracing, and that's time and distance. So in the school setting, close contacts are the students who are within 3 feet if they're masked, or 6 feet if they're unmasked of a positive case. Now, what a cluster is when 3 or more positive cases who are considered close contact in a school setting, when you have that. So when you have 3 or more cases in a school setting, whether it's a basketball team, whether it's a classroom, a lunch table, whatever type of thing that we have there, and it's monitored over a 14-day period. Now, the big difference here is that you apply a Mask to Stay protocol with students who are determined to be a close contact to the cluster. So I'll show you the difference in that, because I have this screen in here as well. And I'm going to have to probably do my quick share change. So if you want to just hang on for a second, I could do this. Okay, so there you go. Oh, and it does that. So you're going to have this anyway. Can I do this? Okay, that helps. So here's the difference that we have here. We're taking that same traditional classroom. So in the other situation, if Mary tests positive, previously we would have the 8 students around her that would be considered close contacts. In this case, they wouldn't be. We would only initiate the Mask to Stay when a cluster is present. In a cluster, you have 1, 2, and let's say it's 3. There are 3. So the first standard that you have to hit is, are there 3 or more cases? All right, that's a plus. So 3 plus. The second thing you have to hit is whether or not the students are close contacts. And I'll explain that in a second. And then the third one is looking at the 14-day period. So in this case, when you do get the cluster, then you would look and say, all right, now when we look at the students, then that would be the issue where you'd get into mass to stay. Now, we haven't had, like when I went over the past 2 weeks, we haven't had any clusters. So if we were applying this right now, we would have 0 students in mass to stay. So the cluster is a lot less common than just one individual inside of a classroom testing positive. Now, here's the reason that I talk about and say that number 2 is the one that I think gets the most confusing, and that's the close contact component. Because if you remember, the goal was to limit or prevent spread inside the classroom. If we have Beth, I can't read that, is that Anne and Isaiah? So this could meet that category of 3 cases within a classroom, but that's just by chance. There were 3 students within a 14-day period, so there's really no cluster and there's no spread. I mean, because it wouldn't make sense to where you say, well, how did Beth spread it to Isaiah and not get these students and you know, just straight down the line? So that doesn't count as a cluster. So just because that there's 3 present inside that class doesn't mean it's a cluster. So therefore it wouldn't trigger the mass to stay protocol. Now, the nurse would follow up with the teacher, because even though this is the seating chart, if the teacher comes back and says, well, Beth, Isaiah, and Anne actually worked together in a group project for the past week, then that becomes a cluster. But in general, it doesn't, you know, if you have a situation like that. So that's a huge difference between cluster tracing. And the other part is it doesn't have that exponential magnifier, because when we had Mary in there before and there were 8 students in their class, it doesn't mean her next class and her next class, you know, you would have all these students who would have to go into the mass to stay protocol. It would only be there if there was a cluster in that one as well. So it significantly impacts what we would have to do with that. So going through, yep, sharing is closed. Going back to this. All right, I want to talk about what that means in K4, because this is going to look a little bit different there, because we do have a different situation with that. K4 is different. Let me see if it shares correctly. So kicking over to, hang on a second. Let me go here. Okay, good. So in K4, what we would implement is we would look at it to say if there are 3 cases inside a classroom. And so when we would look at and say Isaiah, Robert, and you know, Maggie, one of the reasons for it is when you look at us 5 through 12, we go class to class. It's a mosaic type of schedule where students travel from class to class, and even though we're in teams in DIS in the middle school, they're not all traveling as a group. They could go to different classrooms. Our elementary school is different, where these students are in the same classroom all day. You know, this is the seating chart when they're in their seats, but you're going to have time at the carpet. You're going to have library, art, PE, all these different settings that they travel together. So when, and it's not manageable for the teacher to be able to talk to the nurse and say, well, wait a second, was Isaiah, you know, near Maggie for 15 minutes or however it goes there. So it would look different. We would be looking at a cluster within the class due to the fact that they're there every period, and seating charts could be different, and it's just not something that is manageable with that. So let me go back to this. All right. Oops. And okay. So something I shared before, and I added a couple to, the feedback that you get varies. Coming back from break, even opening, I was receiving emails saying that, we shouldn't have come back in person. We should have gone on the virtual. We have feedback, you should remove the masks entirely. And then you get feedback saying we should extend the mask protocol through the entire year. Talk about how mask is limiting the educational experience, the question of the efficacy of masks. Then you get masks are a simple solution that benefit all. This was a newer one that I thought this was a good point, was talking about the phased approach and that not being necessary, and kind of talking about that. And I'll probably get into that, but when we originally talked about the phasing in, that was when the vaccines were just coming out in November. And it was a question saying, well, why don't you start with the building that has had access to vaccines and then be able to move down towards that? We're at a point now where vaccines have been available for emergency use for children 5 through 11 for almost 4 months. So I think in November, the first week in November is when that was available there. And then the thing is, well, we understand this, but masking is still recommended indoors. So we understand that there are multiple viewpoints with this. Looking at the path forward, something we did send out, I did send out last week that I was comfortable with, and that was lifting the mask requirement at the high school this Wednesday. I get it, it's conference day. I didn't know that when I was saying February 9th, so it would start on Thursday. Now, the reason I was comfortable with that is because we already had that lift in place. And the only reason we paused it was because of the Omicron spread, and the Omicron spread was gone. So that was something that I was comfortable in doing. The conversation tonight that we need to have with the board is lifting the mask requirements for the Dover campus and the elementary school, and determining a date when we should lift that. The mask requirement, due to the nature of our preschool, and it is designed to be a special needs preschool. That is the #1 purpose of it. And you could have students who are medically fragile in there. And also they are not eligible for any type of vaccination at the age they're in. I would not recommend lifting the requirement in preschool. Some considerations that I would offer to the board as we have this conversation. The original date proposed for the Dover campus in that phase-in plan was January 5th. The original date proposed for the elementary school was January 24th. The vaccinations did receive emergency approval for ages 5 through 11. It was late October, but I think it was maybe the 29th or something. And I don't think the vaccinations really started till the week after, which is the first week in November. Valentine's Day parties at Westlake Elementary School on February 10th and 11th. You would assume that the Valentine's Day party would be on the 14th, but they're not. They're on the 10th and 11th. I'm not sure the best idea would be to have your first day of doing any type of a lift of masking was when you're inviting families in. That could derail your initiatives from the start. Masks are still required on buses, and this is something that as we move forward, we have to have as a consideration, because in any of the buildings where you lift the masking requirements, it's very likely kids aren't going to bring them if they're not going to be wearing them. And we do need to make sure that students do have a mask that they can wear on the school bus, even if we have the boxes that are on the bus that they can get one, but we would prefer not supplying them.
And that's federal law, correct?
That's federal. Yeah, that's one that's kind of in us. And also I think other protocols are to bring up, because the most popular and what brings most people to the room is going to be a mask protocol. That's the one that is the hot button topic. But there are other protocols that we would need to talk about as well. Right now, we're pushing our library and our elementary school into the classroom, and we're doing that. When we do carpet time, when we have students coming to the carpet for different things, it's not the full class. They'll split it up so that they can keep some distancing in there. Music classes and being able to talk to the music teachers about what recommendations they're getting from their associations. And then lunch K through 8. Lunch K through 8, everybody's in the cafeteria. There was a time where we weren't doing music because in the elementary we had kids also flowing into the music rooms. They're out of that. Everybody's in the cafeteria, but you still have assigned seats, which is not really uncommon for elementary. You typically don't let elementary kids run around and change their seats. So, but that is something that we would need our teachers to be able to look at and make sure that they have in place. And then continue mask breaks, because this is something where if you have students who are continuing to wear masks, we do need to make sure that we still have mask breaks within the day for that. Now, kind of going through this, I had mentioned before, when it comes to the high school, I think, lifting on the 9th and having that take place on the 10th. When it comes to the other campuses, I wouldn't look at that until next week, until Monday or after, whatever you're comfortable with that. But I think the part that we are going to continue to watch is spread in cases. It's one that we have our 2 goals, and that's opening our school every single day and making sure that we don't become that hot spot. So we will continue to monitor that. We will continue to participate in the Ohio Department of Health's Mask to Stay, Test to Play program. But I think the thing that the board to consider tonight is a good day to talk about lifting the daily mask requirement for the Dover campus and Westlake Elementary School. That concludes my part.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall we begin talking about the high school?
Do you want to take public comment first, and then isn't that what's next?
We could do that.
Because we can hear from the public. And
anyone have any questions with what Scott presented on? Okay. At this time, we have a hearing from the public. The public may address the board during the periods of the meeting designated, of course, for public participation, which is now. Each person may address the board. Please give your name and your address. If several people want to speak, each person is allotted 3 minutes until the total time is allotted that is used. During that period, no person may speak twice until all those who want to speak have an opportunity to speak. The period of public participation may be extended by a majority vote of the board. We'll spend 15 minutes on the initial hearing of the public. Would anyone like to address the board at this time? Please, if you would, state your name and your address.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Wendy Pavasic. I live at 1779 Granite Court. I'm so sorry for popping up here first, but family duties, Monday nights are crazy for us, so I had to take the opportunity, but before I have to head out. Also, please know that all your voices are worthy. I'm not going to be able to stay to listen to them, so I apologize for that, but kudos to you for all of you being here. A friend of mine shared a quote with me as I was prepping for this, and it really resonated with me. The quote states, "The world shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage, think, and act big." So I'm here tonight to act big, even though I'm very nervous. And whether or not our views agree or not, I commend all of you once again for being here and acting big and speaking up. So I respect whatever side you are on. That being said, my side, like I said, am Wendy Pavasic. I have 2 daughters currently enrolled in the district, and I also apologize if I'm going to be reading. Nerves are going to set in. I would love to give you the eye contact that all of you deserve, but most likely I'm going to have to read. I have 2 daughters currently enrolled in the district, with the 3rd ready to enter preschool in the near future. I'm not here tonight to present research to you, for I've already done so in my numerous verbose emails to you, probably more than you would have cared to receive from me. I'm also not here tonight to remind you of my 18 years in the field of pediatric mental health and child development, or the research that I gathered and evaluated in social skill development and anger management during my tenure with the Cleveland Clinic, although maybe I did just remind you of that. I'm here tonight face to face as a respectful, concerned parent, pleading for the opportunity to give normalcy a chance. Just give it a chance. You have requested patience and understanding from parents as you have navigated the response to the pandemic, saying that mediation tactics would be fluid. Yet to this point, nothing has been fluid. Everything has been static and little has changed. At this time, after the Omicron surge, where countries around the world, companies across our great nation, School districts, including those surrounding us, and individual households are eliminating personal mandates, our district continues to mandate the masking of our youngest and most developmentally vulnerable. The elementary school children need to be given the opportunity to fulfill and be assessed on competency C4 on the Ohio Social Emotional Learning Standards, which states children grades 3 through 5 must read social cues and respond constructively by identifying others' reactions to tone of voice, body language, and facial expression. How is this to be done effectively if masked all year long? Thank you for giving the high schoolers a choice, but it is truly our youngest in the district that are being impacted the most due to the very foundational nature of preschool and early elementary school years. The illogical hypocrisy between buildings is extremely frustrating as a parent. For instance, at the elementary school, my daughter is not allowed to sing in music class, but at the middle school, my other daughter is allowed to sing in choir. Another example, my elementary school daughter is forced to wear a mask during school hours, yet after school hours, she sheds it to play on the Westlake travel basketball team with her peers on school property. I even question bringing these examples up. By the way, they won their tournament yesterday. They are league champs for Westlake, so just a little shout out to them. I even question bringing these examples up in fear that what freedoms and joys my daughters do have will be taken away from them. The rolling back of the mask mandate is illogical and not fair to the youngest in our district. Allow everyone the freedom of choice and monitor the numbers like a hawk, like you are already doing so, as am I. If cases increase, reinstate and enforce the mandate, but give everyone equal opportunity. Don't discriminate based on age or school of attendance. No other district around us, to my humble knowledge, has approached it in stages. They have treated all children and families with their districts fairly and equally. I question if our approach has anything to do with the fact that according to, I'm sorry?
Are you almost finished? You've reached your time and other people want to speak as well.
Okay, thank you. According to the public records of the U.S. Department of Education National Center for Education Statistics, Westlake has taken a total of $5,145,407 of federal COVID relief aid and an average of $1,508.92 per student. That is more than double amount taken than any other school district here on the northwest side of Cleveland. Was our freedom of choice literally bought in exchange for the freedom was our freedom of choice literally bought in exchange for free money from the government? Rhetorical question, no answer needed.
Thank you.
Let me remind you, Ohio's revised code 3.07 states that anyone holding office under the Constitution of Ohio shall forfeit office if one willfully and flagrantly exercises authority or power not authorized by law. This is not a law, this is a mandate. It is time to let it go before the written bonds start flowing in. As the largest landholder here, residential landholder here within Westlake, I have extremely high vested in stakes, not just that go beyond just my family.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have to end this. All of this being said, I'm taking his time.
We're going to follow the rules.
All of this being said, I know in the long run, my children will be okay because social emotional development, critical thinking skills, lessons of justice, equality, freedom, and love begin and end at home. My children know that their spirit cannot be muzzled, nor can mine. They have been taught to respectfully stand up for what they believe in. They know that they are more than half a face and deserve for their beautiful smiles to be seen. They yearn to share their love of learning with a full breadth of human communication. They move forward each day with hope in their hearts, not fear of tomorrow or the person next to them. I urge you to do the same. Now is the time to put hope over fear. Give choice to all.
Discussion. Who else would like to address the board?
I appreciate it.
Who else would like to address the
And
board?
thank you for your time so much. I appreciate it very much.
We have a motion on the floor.
Go ahead. Discussion?
You have a motion on the floor
Yeah. We had a second.
to recess, so that
Discussion? We have a motion. On the floor. Discussion?
We need to make sure that we
Will do. Understood.
enforce our rules as per thing.
I understand.
because there's a motion to recess, I do unfortunately need to call for a vote unless you
Yeah, go
choose to withdraw your motion.
So if we have continued abuse of their opportunity or anyone's opportunity to speak,
Will do.
then we will suspend the meeting.
Understood. Any other discussion? Are you withdrawing?
You withdrawing your motion?
For now, yes.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you.
Who else would like to address the board? Who else would like?
No,
No.
No one else wants to address the board, or we're going to move on.
it is a policy of the board.
Would you like to address the board?
Yeah.
Okay, if you would, state your name and address,
Yeah.
and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Christina Hunter, I live 675 Brick Mill Run here in Westlake. I have my children in both Dover campus and Westlake Elementary.
Okay.
And just a question. Is school planning on collecting information from the parents about the children's vaccination status? I'm just asking as a, maybe voluntarily, if people would like to share that information. I understand that we cannot force anybody, but just as a parent, it would be a valuable piece of data just to know
Understood.
percentage
Thank
of
you.
vaccinated children in the class.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? Your name and address, please.
My name is Elaine Evenhouse, and I refuse to give my address. Glad to see you're all wearing your masks. Consistent with your deception to the public wearing your masks, unlike last time you saw me, where you took them off after the video stopped rolling. And Joe Crap, I didn't forget the battery against me when I found, when I caught you all taking your masks off and deceiving the public. So I didn't forget about that, don't worry. I'm standing before you as a concerned parent. I'm also here to speak for children who cannot or will not speak for themselves out of fear of punishment from their teachers and ridicule and exclusion from their peers. I'm also talking for the ones that have anxiety and depression because of everything that you are choosing for our children today and for this past year and last year. I represent many others who, like myself, oppose social distancing, vaccine mandates, mask policies, and lockdowns. I'm here to let you know that we are out there. We are watching and we are organized. We have taken notice of your activities. We have witnessed your behavior, and our children have borne the brunt of your short-sighted and misguided policies. For this, you will be judged, and you will continue to be judged. We have watched as you played politics and responded in fear rather than following the science and using discernment and sound judgment. We watched as you enforced draconian mask policies and coercive vaccination campaigns on children who pose little to no risk of infection or contagion. Now we are watching as you haphazardly repeal these damaging and misguided measures at the high school while insisting our youngest and most developmentally vulnerable middle school and grade school children continue to cover their faces when they had the least risk of death from the start. I'm here to put you on notice. You reap what you sow. You have caused harm, and you will each be held accountable. Excuse me. And I implore you. And this is damaging and ineffective. Stop this damaging and ineffective mask policies. Join Rocky River, North Ridgeville, Avon Lake, Magnificat, North Olmsted, Olmsted Falls, Berea, Brecksville, Independence, Strongsville, Hudson, Brooklyn, and many others who have lifted their mask policies, returned to their schools, making them a welcoming place where children can laugh, learn, and enjoy the companies of others. The silent majority, there are more of us than there are of you. All around the world, you are starting to see that. We are not silent anymore. You will see it soon enough. And also, do you really think these kids, these elementary school and preschool children aren't seeing their friends at home and at church and at birthday parties and sleepovers? You really think that these mask mandates in schools matter? Do you really think they're not seeing kids at their school events and sporting events after school? There's over 100 people in the school the other week at a wrestling tournament. There'll be another one this weekend. See how many people are wearing masks.
Thank you.
Guys,
Anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? Go ahead. If you would state your name and address, please.
Jennifer Orley, 2333 Fox Run. I want to start off by saying that I understand this is a very sensitive topic. There are many different views on mask wearing, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I'm here tonight because I believe this should be a parent's choice. This is long overdue, and I should have spoken up sooner. I was trying to be understanding of other people's opinions and feelings, and in doing so, I've let down my own children. I should have done a better job advocating for them, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'm happy to see we're finally heading in the right direction and lifting the mask requirement at the high school, but I still don't understand the need for it to be a phased rollout considering the ODH changed the contact tracing requirements. There are a number of surrounding schools that have been successful in lifting the mask requirement without doing a phased rollout. My children spend their days at school consistently being told not to get too close to friends, no singing in music class, no partner work in class, pull up your mask. At indoor recess, don't leave your desk. Don't touch your friends' games. Don't touch your friends' toys. Don't sit too close. The list of restrictions goes on and on. Maybe we should all take a moment and remember how school was when we were growing up. Could you imagine if that was your typical 7 to 8 hour day at school? Tell me how this does not affect our kids. It's time to lift these restrictions. Do we care more about sports than we care about our kids' educations? Because they can play close contact sports with no masks. My children can go and do anything except go to school without wearing a mask. Please make that make sense to me. Why are we so insistent on mask wearing? COVID is an airborne virus with a molecular size that easily passes through a cloth or surgical mask. In order to stop that, you need to be fitted for an N95. The cloth and surgical masks our kids are wearing do nothing. As stated by the FDA, the use of these masks have not been proven for antiviral protection. And as a matter of fact, it says on the box that does not prevent the spread of disease or infection. I understand this is a difficult decision to make, and you're dealing with a lot of emotions on either side of the topic. But your job is not to mandate medical decisions, especially when the health department has only issued recommendations. You're the superintendent and the Board of Education. Your focus needs to be on educating our students. Please leave the health decisions up to the parents and their doctors. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address the board tonight?
Justin Orley, 2333 Fox Run. Good evening. I was excited to see that you decided to start a phase out of the mask requirement at the high school. I feel like we're finally going in the right direction. However, I'm disappointed it's taken this long and that we are starting to roll out with the older children. It is time for these children to go back to normal. There are so many schools around us that have already been back to normal, and I keep hoping this board does the right thing, but I continue to be disappointed. As a parent, this should be our decision to make and not yours. Both my daughters have had COVID already, so they have natural immunity. They shouldn't be forced to wear one. It is disappointing that our decisions have been affected, that your decisions have affected these kids so much. Having a teacher constantly tell the classroom to move their mask up or tell your daughters they are not allowed to hold hands or hug their best friend has gone on for too long. I feel that common sense is not being used by this board. I go all these sporting events and only a handful of children have the mask on. I just want to understand how this board is rolling this out when all these kids practice and play games with no mask. It makes zero sense to me and makes you look foolish. Hundreds of kids can run around all weekend in gyms with no mask, but you are still making my daughter stay 3 feet from classmates and wear masks. It's mind-blowing that during this phase rollout, we are going to have children continue wearing cloth masks, even though the CDC says cloth masks provide the least protection. I would like to ask all the questions to why so many of you remove your mask when you talk during these meetings. Are the teachers allowed to remove their masks when they are giving instructions to the children? I ask my daughters, and the teachers never take them off when they are talking. You do it so everyone can hear you better, but I guess the children just need to pay closer attention, I guess. Once again, the common sense with the board is mind-blowing. We take them off to talk, but teachers can't. We require masks in schools while kids are allowed to play close contact sports all weekend with no mask on while inches from teammates. We require masks even if the children have natural immunity. We continue to do phased rollouts while the communities have been back to normal for a while. Olmsted Falls School Superintendent suspended mask mandate back in January. North Olmsted suspended their mask wearing mandate starting today. It would be nice if you did the same now. Let's finally use some common sense and suspend the mask wearing requirements right now without a phase out role plan. Thank you.
Thank you. You're currently at your 15-minute limit.
Okay. Is there a motion to continue public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
For the motion, is there a amount of time that you're looking to extend it?
Another
Another
additional
15
15.
minutes.
Roll call?
Fanukin,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Here not,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Who else would like to address the board tonight? Go ahead. Name and address, please.
My name is Eric Fortin, 31089 Murfield Way. I just don't understand why there's any scientific explanation of why you think a rollout, not all at the same time, of all schools makes any sense. These kids play together the second they get off the bus. They take their mask off, they go outside, they play together, they come inside, they play together. These kids are only wearing masks at school. If some parents want to have their kids wear a mask, go for it. Be my guest, okay? No problems. But everywhere, there's not a single place in this, I take my kids anywhere, school, I'm sorry, stores, family, friends, anywhere in the public, they have to wear a mask. And so I demand that we just eliminate masks altogether for all age groups at once. This has gone on long enough. My daughter complains all the time that her classes are getting fogged up. She takes them off. I see pictures from her teacher all the time. Her mask or her glasses are off. Well, now her eyes are getting worse because she doesn't have her mask, her glasses on all the time. Okay, this is hurting our kids. It's gone on way too long. Should have been ended long ago. We need to go back to normal. We can't keep our children living like this.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board tonight? Actually, she already did. Anyone else before, I'm sorry, your name one more time? Is everyone that wanted to speak have an opportunity to speak? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I respect all the, the parents' opinions here. And it might be the time now to take the masks, and I leave that decision to the board. I just wanted to say that our schools so far, in my opinion, did a good job to protect our children. The spreaders and the high numbers that I saw were after Halloween parties that high school kids did with their parents allowing it, unfortunately, which was outside of the school. I feel like the schools provided what we needed. When my son had a fever at school, the nurse called it, provided a test that I could do that came back negative. And so I felt supported in that situation. That's all what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on from public comment. Is there a board member that would like to open discussion on Dr. Goggins' presentation?
Currently have board committee reports first before board comments.
Okay.
It's up to you if you want.
Let's begin with legislative liaison.
I had a good conversation with Representative Smith regarding the changes with property taxes.
I appreciate you reaching out to her. This in regard to, I believe it's House Bill 126.
Yeah.
Where they're removing the ability of districts to counterfile or file on property tax valuation disputes. So I appreciate you reaching out to her and having that conversation. Thank you.
I don't believe it's come before the House yet.
It has not yet.
The past, has it been in the Senate yet?
Yes, and there's more, it's about concurring the two bills right now, and the House has to vote to concur, and I explained why we did not want her to vote to concur, so she understands.
So it hasn't passed in the Senate.
So the original House bill passed in the House, it went to the Senate. The Senate made a bunch of changes, passed it, and now it's gone back to the House for either additional changes or concurrence with it. If they concur, it would go to the governor for his signature. If they do anything else, it still will stay in the legislative body.
Did she give you an idea where we are in discussions and about changes?
She's very frustrated about the changes.
Okay, so she feels it's going to pass.
She's not sure how it's going to go in the House, but she's frustrated about the changes that happened from the Senate.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But anything else?
That's all for what I've got right now.
Student achievement. With the charge of Dr. Scott Goggin, we continue to engage Youth Truth. Youth Truth harnesses student perceptions to help educators and education funders accelerate improvement. They accomplish this through validated survey instruments and tailored advisory services. They, of course, partner with schools and districts, and they also partner with education funders as well as states, all to enhance learning for students. Fall 2021, of course, marked a wholly unusual back to school season. Youth Truth invited students from the district as well as districts across the country to reflect on their experience. And we did the same with Youth Truth, which funding came from the Nord Family Foundation. Youth Truth asks a new timely question this year. The COVID pandemic has changed learning for many students. Is there anything that you think your school should know about how this change has been for you, or that your school can do to help you during this change period? And Youth Truth will be sharing that information on 5 themes specific to the answers to that question that relate to these 5: friends and social school, mental health, sense of loss, masks and mandates, and future plans. So I hear about what we've heard from families, obviously, for years now. And with that in mind, we are very mindful of our students, and we will be working with Youth Truth and addressing some of these issues.
Have we gotten a full set of results yet?
Stephanie was here. She's working on a debrief with.
Okay.
Getting that.
We get that big report that they send to us at the end, and we're going through those and then the presentation. Policy.
Well, we're
We have a
reviewing,
first reading.
right, the first reading
Right.
tonight.
When we get into board items, there's a good amount of policies, and I'll cover a few of them.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
we touch on those.
Finance and audit.
Mr. Hopkins was just informing me that we're already going to be setting up a couple meetings for, I think it was in March.
Shooting for March 22nd
March 22nd.
and then May 17th.
And at those meetings, it'll give us the ability to kind of reassess on how things are going so far this year with most of our permanent improvement projects. And then start planning as well for what projects again need to be prioritized for next year. We know obviously Holiday is going to be probably one of those high priority things for next year, but in those meetings, we'll start to go through and kind of reconfirm some of the things. And if by chance there's some things that we don't know yet, that could potentially pop up similar to what we experienced with GIS and the boiler. So
I know this is
LBMS. DIS in the boiler or LBMS?
LBMS.
I know this is a guess, but do you think we'll have any steps forward with regard to Holly by that time?
Yeah, we'll have a good base of information. Working with Mr. Kosar is already engaged with ICON
Okay.
on our intent to move forward and get pricing and all of that fun stuff. So I believe that's roughly 6 weeks out. I believe we can have some information ready for that meeting.
Thank you, Casey.
And is the fencing the first thing that will be done with it? Okay.
Yes.
Curriculum.
We were supposed to meet Wednesday at the high school for our second curriculum field trip of the year, but we discovered that there's no school for Westlake High School Wednesday. So we are now meeting March 2nd for our
Curriculum.
7th.
Okay. Community outreach. The Board of Education partnered with members of the Westlake Educational Foundation, the Westlake PTA, Westlake Demon Athletic Boosters, Westlake Music Boosters, and Westlake Alumni Association for the 2022 car raffle. Serpentini Chevrolet again donated a 2022 Chevy Trax. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised for the foundation, as well as partner organizations, and the winner was announced on Friday at the varsity basketball game. We were thankful to be a part of the excitement and success of the raffle. Many thanks to Westlake Educational Foundation board members, Mary Essig, Ann Byer, Craig Catanzarite, Paul Nebraska, Todd Hopkins, and Dr. Scott Goggin. Also, the Board of Education is partnering with the Westlake Bay Village Rotary for the Westlake Bay Village Rotary Art Festival on July the 30th. last year brought 50 artists, music, food, and about 2,000 attendees. Partners include Westlake Porter Public Library, Westlake Elementary School, and the city of Westlake. It was a super event for many reasons, one of which is the opportunity to collaborate with many community members. The Board of Education attended the Westlake Alumni Association Hall of Fame announcement ceremony. That was on Friday. There was a ceremony and a social. 2 of the honors will be awarded posthumously. I always enjoy meeting these inductees. It was a lot of fun sharing their evening with them. I share their excitement and chatted with them about their past and current accomplishments. We'll of course hear more about them during homecoming week in the fall. I also enjoy hearing about their plans for the future. I promise to share their true and repeated words of praise for the board, the administration here at Westlake, and all associates here at Westlake, including employees and volunteers. And I'd love a bottle of water if anyone has one. It was a fun evening and we enjoyed it.
It was a good basketball game. The game was awesome. The boys varsity
Right
team
on.
tied for the conference championship for the West.
Great.
It's a fun night.
Joe, with the Rotary Art Festival, is Kiwanis still going to be involved with that? With the
They are.
pancake breakfast?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, I thought it was a fabulous
Right.
event last year, and it was great to start it up again. So is it still going to be at the library?
It's going to be at the library and the elementary school, yes.
Okay.
Any other committee reports? I'm going to move on to first reading of policies. You've all had an opportunity to read these for the first time. Dr. Goggin, did you have some words?
Yeah, if I could, I just want to highlight a few of them. I know you've had a chance to see them, but I would like to just focus on, oh, I can't see my tab up there. Let me see. You could see my tab, but there's bars in my way. Let me try and get to these. Just a couple to highlight. Get out of there. Okay, so this one I'll start with.
Which one's that?
This is 2370.01. Just some of the ones that have the more significant changes to them. This is some new verbiage that you can see then there. What's in red is what is crossed out, and then what is in green are going to be new verbiage with that, and it is a rewrite to stay in line with Ohio law. Because it changed, because blending learning before was specifically in
Wonderful.
in regard to the way that we were operating schools, but now it's just more ingrained in what we could potentially do. The next one, this one, you'll notice in green, this is student mental health and suicide prevention. This is getting specific to suicide awareness and prevention programs, safety training, and violence prevention. And this is talking, it says here, the board shall adopt or adapt evidence-based awareness and prevention curriculum approved by the Ohio Department of Education, or alternatively, we utilize suicide awareness and prevention curriculum that has been developed in consultation with public and private agencies. So these focuses are really just refining some of the things that are already out there. So this isn't a new policy, but based on some legislation that may have been passed or some adjustments that have been made, it reflects into our policy as well. This one is in regard to weapons. And there are 3 of these, and you'll notice one is 3,200, one is 4,200, and it goes on to address classified staff, professional staff. And if I could zoom in on that, let me see what happens when I do this. And so what we're saying here, and it's changing some of the language in here, but there's also some clarifications later, because as this gets a little tighter, we have to do some carve outs, and I'll show you those in a second. Now, when we're talking about this in here, what the saying is that staff cannot bring weapons, and that's what this policy is indicating. However, when you start to describe those, you can get down a slippery slope where For example, a starter pistol, when you actually define it in there, it could potentially be considered a gun, but it's a starter's pistol. It has a purpose. So we actually have these carve outs here saying a starter's pistol, a theatrical prop that is a toy and a play. So obviously we want to make sure that we have those in place, and that's logical as well. This one has the most changes in here, and you can go through them, and it's all of this in green here in regard to student hazing. This is also associated with other legislation that could have gone out, and so it's a change between just some policies within there. So I think those are the big ones to highlight, but you can
I
review
have a
them.
question on that
Yes.
last one.
The student hazing,
I'm sorry?
student hazing or weapons?
No, the weapons
Sure.
one, because I normally carry a little Swiss Army knife on my keychain.
Mhm.
And it says in here knives. I mean, that's considered a knife, because there is a knife on it. And a lot of people that I know carry those, so.
And wouldn't be allowed.
So, yeah.
An example I'll give you is a friend of my son's, when he was in fourth grade, was very excited to show off his knife from Cub Scouts. They got from Little, brought it in, very harmless, but it created quite the commotion.
Right.
Those are policies. You can look through those.
Thank you, thank you. And move on to board comments. Art?
I'll start us off.
Okay, I'll go next.
Okay, am I allowed to reply to anything?
And we should,
No?
there's public comment.
Okay,
so I think
well,
it's more just.
Well, there was one thing that didn't sit
Yeah,
well with me.
our goal now is to talk about, take presentations, take comments from people and work on the decision.
Okay, I would just like to state though that I consider it, being on the board, that our job is to educate our kids, but their safety is also our concern. And we try to keep them safe. For instance, if any crisis comes up, we offer counseling for the kids. We're very involved in prevention of suicide and offer the kids programs. So I do believe that their safety and health is a concern of ours. As far as the masking, I mean, I'm probably the oldest person in this room, and when I was in first grade, one of my classmates died from polio. So that was back, I hate to tell you the year, I believe it was 1950, something like that. So I'm well aware of consequences of, dangerous viruses and things like that. I've had a personal friend that has already died from COVID. And yes, my glasses fog up constantly from wearing the masks. I like your plan of having the high school drop their mask and let it be an option for them on Thursday when they come back to school. And I would like to, having been a teacher and taken part in a lot of Valentine's parties, they get pretty messy at times. I'm a little bit leery of dropping the masks before the 10th or the 11th. I would say give them a Valentine's Day present, and let's say next Monday, because COVID is still around. I don't know if we'll ever go back to what we know as normal. We're going to have a new normal, and we're going to learn to live with it. And my suggestion would be to let the rest of the Dover campus and the elementary campus drop the mask mandate next Monday on the 14th. And let it be optional with no bullying or hazing or anything with the kids that choose to remain wearing masks because there will be a lot that may choose to keep the masks.
Anything else, Mrs.
No, I'm
Lozinski?
done.
Dr. Stoll?
I concur with that. I would like to remove the mask mandate and go recommended, this Wednesday, since there's no school, we can start it Thursday. And then a week from today, to get through the Valentine's Day party, we would start the Westlake Elementary and Dover campus and the other schools.
Other thoughts or comments from the board?
I would prefer we stick with the phased approach that we talked about, drop the mask mandate at the high school, changing it to strongly recommended. On Wednesday, starting Thursday, when students return, Dover campus on the 14th, and then the 21st for Westlake Elementary.
Yeah. Pretty flexible with a variety of opinions that are. We're all in agreement with the high school. There's some flexibility on Dover campus and the elementary. The only thing that worries me, but it's not it's just a point to bring up. If we were to do it all at once, and for whatever reason, or somehow, we had a big influx, there's just a whole lot of administrative work, following up work, and all of that. So my concern is that if we go all mask, real quick, then maybe we're going to set ourselves up for not failure, but just over complicate things for our staff. With that said, I think the high school is good. I think I would even agree that the Dover campus would be good. My reservation would be on the elementary, because it is such a big school. It's the biggest school we have. It's the most students in all the buildings. Bigger than the high school, because we have pre-K, K, and 1 through 4. And of course, because even though the younger kids have the access to a vaccination for a couple months now, I think it would be prudent for us to maybe wait, even if it was just 2 weeks after we have the other 2 campuses, the high school campus and the Dover campus, go with the next option. Gives us time to reflect on how things are progressing on both those 2 different campuses. And then obviously 5. The Dover campus, basically, which is Bernison and Dover, those kids all ride the bus together. So if you do it for one, you gotta do it for most kind of thing. It's still gonna be a requirement on the buses, since Stoll said, because it's a federal requirement. So that's another one of those things that we'll need to make sure that we don't forget about. But as it relates to the elementary, I would say, whatever the board strongly is looking forward to, I would say give us 2 weeks. Let's see how things go, both at the Dover campus and at the high school. And if those look good, then it would be pretty simple to make a decision for the elementary school. Then I think.
The only thing that I would disagree with, and I know that North Olmsted, lifted their mandate today, and I think Avon Lake was like a week or so ago, and they are all lifting them, and the numbers are low in the county, right?
But it's even the county, and I guess the way we look at it is even looking at the numbers within the building. When last week I had 1 reported case in the elementary school, and then 2 weeks ago, that was the closing of the 27th, and then the 3rd, that's 4. And like you said, there's 1,200 kids in there. And I guess my question is, I don't know how it's going to get much lower than 1 and 4. Get to that.
Mrs. Lozinski, do you still have some thoughts?
Well, and of course, I meant to say that I think we should continually monitor, and I know you plan to keep the contact tracing. And I do think we need to revisit it, because if all of a sudden we have a surge next week,
So, and so one of the things, and I'll point out as we go through this, because, one of the things that we have done that I think, not everybody would agree with, but I think that we have done well, is that, you see a lot of decisions made by who's in the room, and it's like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but we tried to stay pretty steady with what we have going. And even as we saw the masks lift at the high school, it aligned with the Omicron surge. And I can show you the chart again, where it was a direct correlation between that. And we are monitoring those. And I want to say that, we still want cases reported to us, because we still need to be able to find those clusters. We are still going to monitor. This isn't, when we look at this type, again, we're in a situation where not everyone's going to be happy. And that's the situation that we live in, and I accept that. But it's one that if it's not where everything stops tomorrow, to where we say tomorrow, everything, we can phase back the masks and then begin to do something for, then what other things can we lift if things are going well, So it's like, we kind of like take each step and saying, can we have all the students at carpet time, and so kind of bring it back in where it wouldn't be something where it's just everybody does whatever they want starting Monday. But I think it is one that, if we're being fair with the way we looked at this, and we said, we're going to look at this for 2 weeks. And that's what we did. And as we went through, we have followed the guidance from the Ohio Department of Health. And as they've come out and said, use this flow chart, we use the flow chart. When they say that, here's mask to stay, we use mask to stay. And then when they take the step with contact tracing, that puts us in a position to now look at it where it is more clustered, as opposed to tracing every single person, that's in there. It just makes it more manageable. And so when you look at it, we're hoping that this is going to be better for our nurses in regard to being able to monitor the clusters instead of all the individuals. But where I think you're right is that there are, and I listed them, there are a few steps that we would have to take. For me to do something tomorrow in my elementary school, there is work that would go into that, where we would be throwing a significant curveball to our staff. So I would not support that. But when we give them time and give time to communicate with parents what our intentions are, I think that's something that is manageable.
would they have enough time if we lifted it for next Monday?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, the things, I can make a list and I can like have it, even if it's a long list, it's a manageable list. When we say, hey, when it comes to the lunches, what are you guys going to do for lunches? And it's just a conversation like that. When it's looking like, when I turn to Dave and say, Dave, we're going to need to have X amount of boxes of masks on the bus, and then they can put them on the bus. And so there are things that when it's Monday, we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's something that I'm comfortable in saying we can get the things together that we think we need to get together.
Yeah, I would recommend the high school this Thursday and then everything else.
The high school's easier because we already did it.
Right, and then everything else a week from tonight, which gives you ample time to do that. The other thing is, if you look at the Omicron surged and came down, it's certainly not as deadly as the previous variants. So in the population we're talking about, the risk levels are very, very minuscule. And when I look at numbers 1 to 4 out of 1,200, the percentage is so small, it's almost negligible. So that's mine.
Because when you look at the 14th and the 21st, I don't know what the difference is going to be.
It's not a big,
Because when you're looking at
Well,
one case in 4 cases, right, it's not.
so with the next step, I mean, other than
Well, we haven't
more
heard from
discussion.
we've got 2 for the 14th and 2.
What I'm doing is I'm taking feedback.
I think we're having a
I'll take the
discussion and we're each listening to each
Right.
other as
Yeah.
well. And again, with your most recent plan, ideas really suggested by ODH and things that we've followed all along, and your goal all along, and the goal of the district all along has been to provide a safe environment that would prevent and limit spread of COVID-19. With the national discussion and the local discussion that we're having now, you turn on any radio, read any newspaper, watch, listen, we're all having this conversation now. We had a spike. And if we were in the midst of a spike and hypothetically we had 90% of a particular school that was engaged in, say, in infection or COVID, are those folks going to be going to a math contest? Are they going to be going to a GOB? Are they going to be going to a wrestling meet, what have you? And we wanted to keep our students engaged, all in, and we wanted to limit the spread because our students would have been affected if they were affected by the spread, and to keep students in person 5 days a week. And I think at this point, we're able to keep students in 5 days a week with a mask lifting and a mandate lift as well. We're still going to be engaged in masking on buses, and I'm assuming that we have plenty of supply available, right?
Yep.
And a measured phase out, I think, as you mentioned, I think is acceptable. So we're having the conversation again, nationally, locally. We're getting to the point where vaccines have taken hold. Those that wanted a vaccine have gotten a vaccine. If those that want to mask, they'll have an opportunity to mask. So I like
the other point that I want to make clear, there's two of them. We're not banning masks.
Exactly.
Right. And the second part is we are keeping a masking component, but it goes from when, as you watch the progression as we've gone through and you've been able to watch it evolve, at least I have, from trying to run a school district for this, you've seen the evolution to where it started where in March of 2020, where we were told you need to shut down.
Right.
You know, it was an order from the state of Ohio, you are closing schools. And, I would challenge that we're probably seeing more cases on our charts now than we did back then. So we'll look back on it and say, well, you know what, we were closed when maybe we didn't have to be closed,
right,
in that sense. So I think as we look at this and you've seen the evolution of, with vaccines coming in, with however you feel about it, but with vaccines coming in or the different things that we have access to now, so we're not banning the masks, and we're utilizing the masks more strategically, in a sense, to where if you have a cluster, because remember, our goal is to limit spread, right? Well, if you're seeing spread in the cluster, implement the mask to stay. If you're not seeing spread, then don't mandate the mask in there. So it's not that the mask, requirement is gone. It's now being used more strategically, is what we're looking at.
Right.
To add on to that, I like what you were making reference to before with the elementary school, and that the mask is one piece of a bigger list of things. I guess that's my fear, is that when people hear masks are optional, then all the guards go down.
Yeah,
and that's just a fear of, hey, we went from that's kind of 4, now we're at 0. And that's really my only fear. And that's going to just come back from this.
What's your only fear?
Is that
we go from a bunch of protocols to none.
No, and we're not doing what we got to do.
But and I know we're not, but the perception will be, because there's been so much attention tied to the masks, and if the masks are no longer required, which is fine, everyone is going to be like, that's it.
Well, Scott's got to write that in his communication to the family.
And I'm not necessarily saying the students. I'm more like, there's administration, there's the employee. I mean, everybody needs to make sure that says, hey, yeah, we're not doing masks anymore, but we are still doing these other things.
Sure.
So it's not all.
Well, but that's why, and even something as simple as mask breaks, like we intentionally put that on because as we sat and talked about, and because that was part of the conversation, is what would we need to have to communicate to our staff as we go through here? And if out of one thing we're saying is, hey, you know what, we strongly recommend you do wear the mask. However, we're not going to give you any breaks, then that is now turning it to, it's not promoting that at all as well. So we are trying to go through, and as we engage with our staff, and that's why, another reason why when we look at waiting until next week, we're able to engage with folks. What am I not considering, nurses? What am I not considering, elementary school teachers or DIS teachers as well? So.
The latest Mayo Clinic, they have a report, and I mean, it was the masking, the social distancing, the vaccination, the sanitary, the cleaning. There were, those factors all contributed to cutting down. And so I would say we still encourage a little bit of social distancing,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm sure they will. Not all the kids will be together. We'll still maintain the cleaning, and hopefully more will be vaccinated if they choose to. So
I think the cleaning will be key, especially if we're into flu season.
in what?
Into flu season.
Oh, yes.
So
We have assurance that cleaning will be as robust as it's always been during COVID.
Yes. They do a great job cleaning.
Understood, and wanted to continue. What else? What else?
I still think we've talked about a phased rollout for months. Rolling back masking, I think giving the elementary school parents an additional week is something we need to keep in mind. Because it's having those families also develop whatever procedures they want for their households. And if they decide they want to get better masks for their families, it gives them time to make those procurements, because we've not put a date really to the elementary school, which is why I really do think giving them that extra week, allow them to have the conversations in their household about how they're planning on handling masking.
And you see an ideal date?
That's why I'm saying the 21st. It gives them just that one extra week. 7 days.
No.
It's not another.
What other comments?
Well, as Dr. Diamond said, the cases are low, though. How much lower? can we
Correct,
go?
but we've not given dates to parents in the elementary school. The only one we've rolled back for masking was at the high school. That's the reason why I'm saying the elementary schools are youngest learners, the students that have had the least amount of time. Yes, I do understand vaccines have been available for them since November, but just giving them 7 extra days so they can have the conversations in their households.
We've had a
And
date.
they
Jim.
can figure out.
We had a date.
Your thought is, your thought is we're here by the time any kind of an announcement might come out. We're already in the middle of the week after today, and
Just give them an extra week. Dover campus come back, can roll off on the 14th, and then just give the elementary school an extra week.
any other thoughts on that?
I think we originally, or Dr. Guy had mentioned, Valentine's Day is 14th, which is a Monday, even though the parties are the week before. Although there are probably still things happening on Valentine's Day. I'd be good with the 15th, which is just a week after.
Wait, the day after?
The 15th.
That's Tuesday.
Tuesday?
So you're saying instead of Monday, Tuesday?
What's one?
No,
day
I'm
gonna
just
be?
asking.
What's one day?
No, I was just saying Valentine's Day, I know parties are.
No, that's gonna be the 10th and the 11th.
They're the 10th and the 11th. That's why we're
For
looking.
the
For the elementary.
And the high school is the same.
They don't have
We
parties.
don't do parties.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. My wife always says, we're never on the same page. The elementary parties are, yes, the 10th and 11th.
Correct.
So we definitely said we wanted to make sure we got past that.
We want to get past that.
Right.
And then we have a weekend.
Right, but I guess what I was saying is Monday is Valentine's Day.
Correct.
And even though there'll be parties, there still may be some individual teachers may do some different things associated with it. I would be more comfortable if we did the 15th.
So.
Let's go for the 14th.
14th.
Well, let me, pre-K, you're saying would continue to be next.
Pre-K,
It's
yes.
not on the table.
Yeah, pre-K is, pre-K continues the next. Correct.
And I think about, I have not heard a lot of this. I've heard a handful of cases where students felt restricted by mask and not being able to take a mask break again, and I can count those on one hand, so I don't hear it a lot. We heard it here tonight a little bit, but within pre-K, those students and teachers, they feel that they have the opportunity to have mask breaks. When
That's my understanding. It's also a shortened day,
right.
so it's not a full school day as well.
How long will they continue with the masks than the pre-K?
That's
That's up to,
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't have a date. on that.
okay.
I guess, going back to Ms. Burnett's comment, which I think we were all in a same consensus on a phased approach as we progress throughout the year. Ever since, the first plan was put together, it's always been, even after the younger kids could get the vaccination as well, we continue to talk about a phased approach. I think in the past, we were doing phased approaches that were 2-3 weeks sometimes. To give parents some time, staff some time. The high school goes on the 10th. A week later, we do the elementary school, which would be the 17th.
I don't know if the parents, what do they need the time for? I mean, we've been wearing masks for 2 years
I
now.
understand it, but
Well, some of us. Some of us have never.
You know what?
All right,
Ma'am,
all right,
You
yeah,
have your time.
go ahead.
Yeah.
What are your other thoughts?
no, I was just gonna say, so this board has had a consensus in the past that a phased approach makes sense for the district. So is everyone here at the board telling me that the phased approach is no
Well,
longer?
I think it made sense back then, but if we look at the numbers, they're almost non-existent. So what does one more week buy you when we're getting numbers of 1 and 4 out of 1,200 or better? So
So the board is not in consensus that if,
The,
whether it be today or whether it be a month from now.
when I think of phases, I think about when, say, vaccines became available to older students and
Right.
ages were coming down, and we kind of flowed with phases based on that. No,
that was planned.
I mean,
Well,
that's,
I don't-
that,
I'm not sure that was necessarily a
I think it
key
was.
element. It was a factor,
think it
but it
was.
was not a key element. Just because vaccination options came available, we delayed it based upon
We
how
had-
long
we
it
had-
maybe become available. And again, we know now that for the younger kids, it's been available, I think, 3
Right.
months.
About almost 4 months.
So with, I was just thinking, because when high school students had the opportunity to vaccinate, when things relaxed at the older level, older students, and as that age continued to progress lower, we phased along with that. So that's the thinking.
Yes, and so I guess that would be the thing is, it's a week. And I would propose, if I were to make it a motion, it would be for the 10th for the DIS campus, both Bernison and Dover, or Dover Intermediate, the high school. And then a week later, you do Westlake Elementary. You have the 10th and you have the 17th.
So you're proposing to combine the high school and the Dover campus,
Yes,
and then have
the
Westlake
elementary,
Elementary come off on the Wednesday of the next week?
that is correct.
How would that
Just a week,
affect the
just a week
buses?
apart. It's a week.
Well, that wouldn't impact
That-
buses.
It wouldn't with
No.
the,
You'd have an opportunity
with
to
Dover campus,
communicate.
they'd be,
No, they're
Dover
completely
campus has
separate
their own
buses.
bus route. It's not.
There's no,
Communication with staff is doable.
But you know what, I think that would, because you think about tonight, and it's 7:30, so we're really not getting a message out to the Dover campus very quickly, to be able to turn that around. I think that's.
Would you need till Monday?
Well, I mean, I think what I could do is I can, take the feedback and kind of look at it and be able to go through and see, what's manageable. I struggle with kind of just doing something like that and just turning around to the Dover campus and say, by the way, we met on Monday, this is happening.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
I would still, if I were proposing, I would propose the high school on Thursday, because there's nothing on Wednesday, and then everything else on
Plus, we
14th.
communicated that last week to families.
Yeah,
So the
right.
message that we sent
And the
out, we
message
said
has
that.
been
on
out,
Monday,
right?
is
We're looking
that-
at it. And then
You're good with
everything
that?
else on Monday,
You're good with that?
which gives us a week, and you said that that's ample time, and we've looked at the numbers.
Are you good with that?
I would prefer Westlake Elementary had some additional
Well,
time.
no, I think you were talking high school, right?
No, he said both. He said
both.
the high school, sticking with what we have,
Sticking
and then I heard you say the elementary school and the Dover campus on.
on Monday, the 14th. Correct.
How are you with that?
Me?
The 14th?
That's it.
You know what, I don't know specifically when I look at it objectively and be able to take in the factoring that what's probably it's gonna be working with the nurses to work on what does cluster tracing look like as opposed to the individual. It's one thing for me to draw on a seating chart that I pulled off Google, but then they actually have to do it. And I think it's gonna be the manageable part about the elementary school when it comes to the cluster tracing is that they would just be looking for 3 inside a classroom within a 14-day period. It's not one that they would have to really go chasing seating charts. Where'd you sit in music? Where'd you sit? What did you do in PE? So I think that would be manageable. There's definitely some things we'd have to get through. Can we get it by Monday? Sure. And that's something that I think would be easier on the Dover campus. If it's something that, you wait 2 days in regard to the elementary school, we can do that, but I don't think it's going to change the safety levels. Like, I don't think the school's going to be safer on Wednesday than it was on Monday. So, I mean, I think that's, it could be more like management and being able to do something like that, but.
I'm not too concerned about I guess it's the communication. It's not the safety. I agree with that. I think it's really the communication, the level of communication between internal and external stakeholders, parents and everybody, coaches, everybody that's involved in it. So having a little bit of my fear is that something happens and then it's a week. And we inundate our staff with a major change and give them like 2 days notice between one goes on Thursday,
Sure.
one goes on Monday.
Well,
And that's the reality.
But they are
I
different.
put faith in our
So-
staff that they can do it. If we say no mass on Monday, I think they'd be thrilled.
But let's think about it. The other perspective, John, that when we look at this is, I can do it as a building. If the board's consensus is, let's look at Wednesday, Monday, and Wednesday, we can organizationally do that. I would think about it from the parent's perspective to where if you have kids where it's like, okay, wait a minute, so you're in this building, so for the next 2 days you do have a mask, and then you're in this building, you don't, and being able to manage that as well. So, I mean, we can do it because the adults are separated. I can turn to a building and say, hey, here's what you guys are doing inside this building. I could turn into this building and say, this is what you're doing. But then when you look at it from how a parent has to keep track of these kind of things as well, I think it adds another. So now we're gonna have 3 start dates,
That's where my original one was, just have the Dover campus go at the same time as the high school. And then the element is
that would be, now my high school's like I said, the difference with the high school is a lot of high school, I don't want to say it's autonomous in some ways, but students are more directed. Some are going to a college course, they're leaving the building, some are heading to the choir room. And when you get into the other campuses, they're either traveling by a class in the elementary school or they're in teams in the intermediate school. And plus, I mentioned before the fact that we already have this lift at the high school makes the high school a whole lot easier to do. I mean, we've been there. We've done it for, we did it for 2 weeks, you know, in that case, and we were able to do it. I would not be comfortable turning to DIS and LBMS and saying, hey, starting Wednesday or Thursday, you know, you guys, you know, got to get it and we get the communication out and do that sort of thing. I don't think that's reasonable on the staff, and I don't think it's reasonable on the families.
Well, and I agree. That's why.
Yeah.
I go back to, you know, if you have the high school on the 10th and you do a week later.
So you're just doing the lifting on Wednesdays instead of Monday. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's the 10th at the high school.
to your point, 2 days, or you know, what I said before is 2 days. 2 days is not going to change the safety factor,
Right.
but also 2 days is not the end of the world.
And 2 days. Right.
So I mean,
If anything,
whichever
it's-
way.
if anything, it'll help, hopefully, improve communication. Because you know how, unfortunately, parents will get an email and they might not look at it for 3 days. They may not look at it at all.
Well, but we would send out something from the district, we'd send something out from the building, because sometimes they don't open district ones, but only open building ones. Some people don't open building ones, but
And
open
they
district
delete the
ones.
message that comes across. on it.
But if you tell the kids that on Monday, the
They won't.
14th, they don't have to wear masks, I'm sure they'd let their parents know.
So I guess my real point here is having a level of just period of time of communication as to what we're going.
And I think that's what Dr. Geigen.
Yes, but again, doing it.
So
doing
how
it
about
on
if we
the
do this?
10th.
What I'll do, whether it's Monday or Wednesday, it's not something that whichever, you know, that's one that we get into there. I could take it back to the buildings and say, you know what, you know, is Monday too quick? Can we do this and do that sort of thing as well? So I think we're spending a lot of time on a couple days, and I think that it's
Right, and so,
it's not.
so that's where I'm trying to get my point across, is that it is only a couple of days, so out of abundance of level of increased communication, abundance of say caution, even though we know
Yeah,
that,
it's not.
you know, it's 2 days. So how is it that we're just asking it to be pushed out, which would be the equivalent of a week or 2+ days from what Dr. Geigen said, is such an issue? We've been very conservative as a board from the start of the entire process. We've marched our own drumbeat associated with the entire process. You know, so I'd like to really think that we continue to all have the same thinking and mindset that we had all along, and that we just don't necessarily make decisions.
So can I have general consensus in the fact that I'm hearing Monday and I'm hearing Wednesday, and I know you said the 21st, but I think the predominant, what I'm hearing is Monday and Wednesday. I can take this back, I can grab my directors, I can grab my building levels and kind of see where we are. And we talk about Monday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd rather you have that.
So we
thoughtful
do that
conversation,
and say,
be
so it's either gonna
organized.
be Monday or Wednesday, and we can communicate that
Right, absolutely.
out.
Are we good with that?
So we're gonna do high school.
But high school, we're
High school
keeping,
Thursday.
high school's keeping
Right,
it, and
Thursday.
we're gonna keep it
And
where
then,
we have.
and then the other schools are either.
It's either gonna be Monday or
Monday
Wednesday.
or Wednesday of the
Right.
following week.
Who's gonna make that decision?
I will. I mean, I'll go through and I'll, you know, talk to the building levels and kind of see what we need to get together, and if there's something that we need a little bit more time with or something, but I'll.
It's preferably Monday if we could get it done. If we can't, then we'll go to Wednesday.
Time.
So I'll make a motion that.
Oh, there's no.
So we don't need a motion.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, this is a work session. I'm not looking for a vote. I'm looking for guidance. Because back when you voted on this, you gave me
Right.
the authority to make
Yeah.
these decisions.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't want to do that unilaterally outside of things. So I want to have this conversation to kind of get the idea.
Other thoughts from the board members?
I'm good with that. That's fine.
Okay.
Anything
Any
else?
bets on if they pick Monday? As opposed to Wednesday? Just kidding.
Other thoughts?
Nope. I think we beat the horse.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Are there any other board comments? Is that what you're asking for?
Oh,
I asked it 3 times, but I'll ask.
Oh,
it.
I know.
Are there any other issues that the board members want to bring up? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call?
To adjourn at 7:41 PM. If you're not,
Yes.
Stoll,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Kuzinski,
Yes.
you are adjourned.